Salim and Stefan, you should introduce yourself a little bit. You haven't been on the stream yet, so maybe say a few words who you are and what we're going to talk about today here.
Yeah, sure. My name is Salim Hilayel. I'm a Principal Product Manager for the Oracle Application Express, and I'm here to give an intro about Apex.
Mm-hmm. I am Stefan. I recently joined the Apex development team. I was a member of the community for a long time, so I'm happy to finally be part of Oracle and help build the product from within. I did not work on the MLE integration in Apex, the thing we're going to discuss, but I am its #1 fan, so I will be explaining it from that point of view.
Very cool. Excellent. Thank you, Stefan. Yes. And before we, I guess it will be probably part of your presentation, but before you even go into MLE, etc., can you just, for there will be some people on the stream that have not played with Apex yet, and myself included. And I know Apex is really awesome technology that I think actually more people should be aware of. But can you just summarize in a few sentences for an average developer like me, why should I care about Apex? What's the speciality, or what is the main reason why I would want to build something with Apex?
Oh, there are so many reasons actually. I can go for hours if you want.
Yeah, I just want a summary, just a high-level summary.
First of all, I'll summarize them very quickly. It's a no-cost option of the Oracle database. You can build enterprise professional application, web application using Apex. It's a low-code platform, so you don't have to write a lot of code to achieve the requirements. And the best of it all is it runs on the #1 database in the world, Oracle database.
Right. Yeah, but the Oracle database is kind of a very enterprise option. But I think Oracle database also has Oracle Express, right, where you have a sort of a free version of the Oracle database, right?
Yes, and that's what I will cover also on the slides. So you can run Apex anywhere that your Oracle database runs, including the Express.
Right, including Oracle Express, right? Which means I do not need a super expensive Oracle database license or anything to run actually Apex.
Absolutely, yeah.
Cool.
Okay, so how about I start? I would like to start with this slide, the MLE vision. Now, I've been always a fan of GraalVM. I mean, having the idea of, or the ability to have a team with different background, with different technologies. Some of them, they know C++, another, might know Ruby or JavaScript or Python. All these kind of people, putting them together to write code in your application development in the same high performance runtime is really a great and nice idea. It's very cool, actually. What's even cooler that GraalVM now has been ported to Oracle database, and they named it Multilingual Engine, or MLE. So that's what we like to name the GraalVM version in the Oracle database. So starting from 21C, Oracle version 21C, we have MLE feature. We don't support all the languages yet, so we started with JavaScript. So you can now write JavaScript code in the server side. And if you like to know more, you can scan the QR code and read a nice blog post written by my colleague Elena. And actually, it's very well written. So, but I'm not here to talk about MLE or GraalVM. I'm here to talk about Apex. So if you wonder who I am again, my name is Salim Hilayel. I'm the Principal Product Manager for the Oracle Application Express. And I'll give you today an overview about Apex. And Apex is another embedded feature in the Oracle database. Oracle database is not just a database, it's a platform. It has so many features and built-in stuff that comes and treasures that come with the database. And part of it is the MLE part and the Apex. And right away after my session, Stefan will show you how you can practically use MLE and Apex. But before digging deeper in Apex, we need to talk a little bit about low code. And the definition of low code versus traditional coding, the idea is instead of traditionally writing a lot of code, you just write a little bit to achieve the same quality and the same enterprise application development cycle. Forrester.com believes that low code provides 10 times faster than traditional methods. Gartner believes that by the year 2024, low-code application development will be responsible for more than 65% of the application development activity. That's a lot, and it's coming only in a few years from now. Gartner again believes that low-code platforms provides compelling productivity gains, not only for professional development, but also for citizen development. So if you have a power user, a person who's not an IT tech savvy person, but who would like to contribute to the organization using a low-code platform such as Apex, they can actually write application. And they can do that with speed of delivery benefit. The market growth rate for low-code is around 31.1% for the coming decade. And the market size in 2019 is around 10.3 billion US dollar. And that's a good market, right? So now we come to Apex. So what is Apex actually? It's a low-code development platform. It enables you to build scalable and secure enterprise applications with world-class features. And it can be deployed anywhere. By the word anywhere your Oracle database run. So it could be on the cloud, it could be on your data center, it could be on a virtual machine, on your laptop, Express Edition, Enterprise Edition, it doesn't matter. As long as you have an Oracle database, you can actually have Apex.
Right, and you can also have it, I guess, in the Oracle free tier cloud. The Oracle cloud has a free tier where I can run an instance of Oracle database, right?
That's true. We call that always free, and there is a slide for it actually.
Oh, cool, excellent.
Apex is not just a low code; it's actually the customer's choice for low code application platform. So Gartner has this thing called Peer Insight, and we got the award in 2019, and we got it with distinction compared to other competitors. Again, in 2021, we got the highest score of 4.9. And we are the only vendor that were above 80% in the 5-star category. And we are the highest recommended platform with 96 in the low-code platform domain. The distinguishing characteristic for Apex, we have 3. The whole app development IDE is browser-based. So you don't need to install any client. You don't need to download a software to start development. All what you need is a browser and a URL. And one of the other distinguishing characteristic is we are not a code generator. The whole app definitions are stored in the database as metadata. That's why it's super fast to do changes in Apex. The moment you want to change an attribute or you want to play around with your items or pages, you just do the change, save, and run right away. We have 0 latency access to your data because the Apex engine is installed in the database itself. So if you are accessing the data in the same database where Apex is installed, that's super fast. We're talking about 0.00003 of a second to fetch a record from the database. I mean, compare that with different technologies where data has to transfer over the wire, going to different switches and routers, going to the application server, and then getting processed, and then going back again to the client. The Oracle Apex development is comprehensive. We have a comprehensive low-code platform. You can, in the same place, you can actually build the web apps. You can import and export data. You can publish REST endpoint. You can integrate local and remote data. You can monitor your application. You can do data loading. You can install sample application. You can even do team development and issue stuff and follow it up. You can manage the objects in your database. It's a no-cost, fully supported feature. Why? What do we mean by that? It is there everywhere that we support the Oracle database in all editions. So starting from an Enterprise or Standard Edition 2, or even the autonomous one in the cloud, and all the versions. So starting from 11 G Release 2 up to 21C, anywhere you can have Apex, including the Express one. There is no limit. Our licensing is the most relaxed license ever. We don't have a limit on the number of developers, on the number of end users, on the number of end application that you will write. So unlike the competitors maybe in the low-code domain. It is available in all database cloud services and can run on the premise, can run on Oracle Cloud or even other cloud, or on even your laptop. How much does Apex really cost? Again, there is a free path for Apex. If you go to our always free in the cloud, oracle.com/free, so you can utilize an autonomous database, an always free autonomous database that comes pre-configured with Apex. So you don't have to install it, you don't need to configure it. Just provision an autonomous database and Apex will be there. And it's really free forever. And You can have it also on your laptop or data center or your client machine if you download the Oracle Express Edition, the XE version, and install Apex over there. Apex is there, but it's the old version, so you just download the latest one and upgrade. So that's totally free. If you want to be supported and you want to use the Enterprise or Standard Edition or upgrade your cloud from the always free to use more OCPUs and more storage, you still can do that. And again, it's fully supported at no extra cost. It allows you to rapidly develop and customize and deliver applications because we have pre-built controls for security, for authentications, for interaction, for validation, for session management. These are all declarative options of the platform. So you don't have to write a lot of code to do things like that. And you can move from development to customize back to development until you are comfortable. You can move your prototype to production in actually minutes. The same app that you have today written for the desktop, you can run it on a tablet and on a mobile device. The same app exactly, with zero rewrite, thanks to something called Universal Theme that comes embedded with Apex. It has or provides more than intuitive, accessible UI for any device. And it's fully customizable, by the way. So we have some customers who have taken the Universal Theme, they changed the look and feel, they put their logo and the colors. Some of them, they even put custom CSS and made it totally look not like Apex at all. There are so many common uses or use cases for Apex. You can utilize Apex to do a spreadsheet replacement, for example. That's one of the use cases. And there is nothing wrong with spreadsheet. So many people are using it. Even internally at Oracle, we use sometimes spreadsheet. The problem is when you start using spreadsheet as a database. It becomes error prone. People do mistakes. It's not easy to validate. It's not easy to centralize. It's not easy to secure, right? So you can take your spreadsheet, dump it in Apex, and in minutes, you can have a running app. It will create the table for you. It will import the data. It will create a form, a report, an authentication scheme, different authorizations as well. So you can add users with different roles, administrator role or contribution role, or even reader role. So that's one of the use cases. Another use case is to build opportunistic applications, those applications that are small in nature. They consist of 2-3 pages. And organizations or companies, they want those applications written yesterday. They want it as soon as possible. Using Apex, you can do that in a matter of minutes or even hours, maximum, right? Another use case is actually process digitization. So if you have some paperwork or a process, built on top of manual work, you can actually digitize it. And thanks for the nature of low code of Apex that allows you to do that very quickly. Apex comes with so many visual components. We have a library called JET, Java Extension Toolkit, and we utilize the visualization component of that open source JavaScript library from Oracle. We have it in Apex, so we have all the types of charts that you like. We have also different components in Apex that look really cool, like the classic report, the card region, even the interactive report, interactive grid, and so many other components that you can utilize to visualize data, to build applications that visualize data. I remember I even read a book, how to build a reporting solution on top of Apex. You can also use Apex to do Oracle Forms modernization. So if you would like to move from Oracle Forms and modernize it to be running on the web with a good looking look and feel, and utilizing all the knowledge that you have in SQL and PL SQL, you can do that. That's the best actually and the native way to go. You can utilize Apex to build external data sharing applications, when you have all these REST endpoint exposed, and you can use it also to build ERP systems or enterprise web applications. So it's not only meant for small applications. You can go from the small ones, and by experience, once you are more experienced, you can actually write even enterprise web applications. As I said, it's part of the always free service. So if you provision today an always free autonomous database, which is the latest and the greatest from Oracle, a database that runs by itself, updates itself, patches itself, it tunes itself without the need for DBA, Apex is there pre-configured. So you can go directly and start develop on that great database. As a matter of fact, if you go to the Oracle Cloud Console, the first thing you see on the first screen is actually an introduction to Apex blog post. So some people said, well, autonomous is great, the always free is cool, I want to upgrade, I want to go to the paid version, and I found that it's a bit expensive. We listened to that, and we have a dedicated Apex service much cheaper compared to the autonomous one. It's a subset of autonomous database. It doesn't have all the autonomous features like the machine learning and so on, but it has Apex, and you can concentrate building low-code applications over there. And it's utilizing also the great state-of-art Exadata cloud infrastructure. It's almost $360 for one OCPU and 1 terabyte, but you have the auto scaling. You can scale it up to 128 OCPU and to 1 petabyte of storage if you wanted to. Who's Apex good for? Is it only for developers? Not really. Even business users or power users can utilize the low-code features of Apex and can write applications. Students who have projects and they want to try something very quickly and achieve a project, for example, they can do that. Even hobbyists with some certain idea that would like to show it very quickly, they can build the prototype using Apex. So it's good for all these people. We believe we are the world's most popular enterprise low-code environment. We have over 500,000 developers worldwide, and we have more than 6,000 new applications created every single day. We have literally millions of applications written using Oracle Application Express. And thanks to the community, we have a great community, and trust me, I have been part of that community before joining Oracle, and Stefan also, my colleague, has been part of that community. Apex community is not like any other community. They are highly cooperative. They like to help people. They like to answer. And this is how I learned Apex. I learned it actually from the community. And so it's because of them we are successful. But how really do you use Apex in action? We do. Recently, during the COVID-19, we have been asked in Oracle to build a solution to monitor the data for COVID-19 patients. And guess what? Oracle chose Apex. So even Oracle ourselves, we trust that platform the most. And we built that application, the first one, the therapeutic learning system, has been built in almost 1 week time. That's all what it took from us. And this is on a nationwide. This is for the US government. And it wasn't only the only application that we built. So we built also the patient monitoring system, the DMS, the PMS, and other applications. Actually, we have a dedicated team that their job is writing application for the healthcare system. Internally, we use Apex a lot inside Oracle. We literally have thousands of applications covering every single line of business inside of Oracle. One of the applications, just a quick screenshot that I got, is the area people. This is the application where every single user in Oracle is utilizing to search for people, look for organization, charts, and so on. And it's a very busy application. Trust me, it has around 1.5 million page views per day, more than 50 page views per second, and the execution, the median execution time is 0.04 seconds. Do we have big customers? Sure we have. We have a lot of customers. So some of them today that I would like to show, Vodafone Group is utilizing Apex to manage entire infrastructure lifecycle from provisioning to retirement. They found that Apex allowed them to write applications very quickly with minimal coding. MineSense, which is a leader in intelligent digital mining, also uses our cloud. They're using the data warehouse, autonomous data warehouse, and they found that this provides them the double of speed when it comes to performance, and also it reduces the DBA workload by 65%. And it, most importantly, actually, it cuts the development time from 6 weeks to 1 week using Apex. Siemens, they use Apex and also our Oracle Cloud, and they found that they have been able to build application in just 2 weeks, and it saved a lot of cost. 90% of the cost have been saved. How do you get started? The one-stop shop for you is apex.oracle.com. That's our official homepage, and also the community built site for all things Apex, whether it's Twitter feeds, jobs, meetups, plugins, custom plugins from the community. You find it in apex.world. That's it from me. I think I spent exactly 20 minutes. I'll pass it to you,
Thank you.
Stefan.
Yes, you have been exactly on time here. Thank you. Thank you, Salim. And so there's one question in the Yeah, you went such a flow. I didn't want to interrupt you, but there was a question in the chat. Maybe we can cover that now. It is like how much performance will Apex take, and where does the computation run? So my understanding is that with Apex you don't need like an application server in the middle, because the database is like serving the requests. Is that accurate?
That's exactly accurate. Yes.
Mm-hmm. And typically I would assume that for a typical Apex application, the amount of, I mean, it's not a heavy computational thing. It's more like fetching data from the database and answering a REST. It's not like some mathematical computation. So I would assume that typically it wouldn't add a lot to the CPU time that will be used on that database core.
Well, yeah, it depends also on the use case. Yeah, most of the time it's a database web-centric development platform. So if all what you do is insert data and retrieve data, it's going to be super fast. But sure, sometimes you need to write business logic, and it's going to be complicated business logic. So you have to be careful how to write it. But the Apex engine, by the way, we use Apex to build Apex. So we use SQL and PL SQL. And I've seen the way that how the people are building Apex and the quality of code. It's amazing. The overhead of Apex engine itself on the database is negligible at all. So if you are good in SQL and PL SQL, or if you are good in JavaScript in MLE, you can write a super fast applications for sure.
Cool. Yes, exactly. Yes, and in MLE, of course, it's powered by GraalVM. So even if it's maybe not that fast in the first version, I think, but it will be like very fast in future versions as GraalVM and MLE are optimizing for performance, and then also enabling other languages, because I think this is not a connection with GraalVM here, that like with GraalVM you can use also JavaScript for your logic in Apex, and you do not have to use PL SQL, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Cool. Yes, so I'm now have the screen share of Stefan here. Stefan, so you're a developer on the Apex team, right?
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Cool. All right, then let's go to some developer-focused demos here. Cool.
Sure thing. So just for a bit of context, what you're looking at here is the Apex builder. So I'm running this in the cloud, in the Oracle Cloud. That's what that URL is. And this is where Apex developers write their apps. So when I log into the builder, this is what I see. And I'm just going to also open something else up here. And I already have an app, a demo app that was created with Apex. And this one will run right here. So this is where I build my app, and this is already my runtime of the app. Now, I just want to take a step back and explain why, as an Apex developer, we are excited for the introduction of GraalVM through MLE in Apex. Well, until now, we were used to writing our business logic in the backend with only PL SQL. We could have employed some JavaScript. Perhaps we utilize some external Node.js server, right, and somehow communicated with it, maybe via REST or something, if we had to use some libraries that are only available in JavaScript. But of course, that's not low code anymore, right? You need all this infrastructure. But now with the introduction of MLE, JavaScript is a first-class citizen in the Oracle backend. So this does two things. This allows Apex developers to have an option, right? Perhaps they are just better at JavaScript, or they can tap into the huge NPM ecosystem of libraries and modules and so on. That's one aspect on the Oracle side, but perhaps you are not in the Oracle world at all, right? And you don't know PL SQL. Well, this will help you pick up Apex much easier if you can just start writing your business logic in JavaScript. And of course, JavaScript, the first language to arrive on the block, right? But we do expect many other options in the future. Okay, so I have my Apex builder here. But part of the builder is this little page, the Sql Commands Page, where I can just have a SQL playground, right? So let me just show you some data. I'm just gonna select from the emp table here and execute this. And see, here I can see already the some dummy data from some dummy table. Actually, this page should be renamed, right? Because it's not just a SQL workshop anymore. We can go in here, we can select the JavaScript MLE. Suddenly the syntax highlighting changes, and we can execute the JavaScript. So this code will be sent to the backend, and if it will be executed, and if there's any output, it will be returned back to us. So let's do something extremely basic. Load Twitch. Let's execute this. And we got back our result. So very simple demonstration. We sent JavaScript to the database. We didn't need any wrappers. We didn't need any infrastructure, right? Cool. To set this up. We just have one line and it can just be executed. As simple as that. So this is just in the playground. But what more can we do, right? Because if we're in the database, we don't just want to console log things. We actually might want to interact with the data.
Gotcha.
Well, there is a built-in Apex namespace, and here we can see Apex Con, and this will give us a connection to our database. We don't have to pass in any credentials or anything like that. Everything is already set up because we are in the database itself, but this is how we get to it. And then we can say execute. And here we can pass in a query. So let's say select all from emp, and then this will give us back some rows. And I want the first row, and I want the emp ename column. Of course, we have to console log this. So in a JavaScript context, we got the employee with family name King. This is how you would interact with the SQL engine. We can, of course, write anything in here. We can write PL SQL and call PL SQL packages. We can run update statements, delete DML, anything really. But this is how we would do it in JavaScript. So I just covered a few of the basics. This is the type of JavaScript that we can run. And now let's actually go to an application. So in my Apex builder here, I entered application number 100. These are my pages. But let me go ahead and run this application before I dig into any of the pages. So first things first, I get to a login page. I can sign in. And in my app, I already prepared some examples. I will now present the first example. So simple data access in an app. So consider that you have some data, again, the employee table, and you want to give some employees raises, right? That's always nice. In my UI here, I have a little select list for a department. So let's pick the department of research, and let's give everyone in this department a 100 unit salary increase. We want to, of course, do this server side, right? We don't want to do it in JavaScript on the client. So we have two possibilities now. So far, we were used to doing this in a PL SQL. So let's see, 3,000 should go up to 3,100. So I click the button. This updated just right. How was this done before in PL SQL? Well, this is my page designer. This is where I design pages. And I have my page items like number fields and select lists and things. That would be these things. And I have other components here that visualize data and things like that. And I have a button which triggers a process. So I have three processes here, conditional based on which button I click, something here will get executed. So until now, we could run this piece of PL SQL, very similar to SQL, right? And we can reference these values via bind variables. So the salary increase we can reference like this, and the department number like this. So it's a simple update statement. When I click this button, we execute this code, the page refreshes, I get my new data. Of course, I can also do that without the page refreshing and so on, but just a very simple use case. So that's what we're used to. Now MLE allows us to select a different language here. So in all of, and you'll see it all over the builder, wherever we can insert a little bit of a little code snippet, we can now say, hey, execute this on the backend in a different language. So the second process, perhaps you want to do things a bit more procedurally, this is how you could do it. You can execute this this query, get back the rows, loop over the rows, and based on a condition, for example, if the department number of this row is equal to this page item, then we execute an update statement, and we can also pass in parameters to these bind variables in here. So this would be an option. So actually, let me demonstrate that this works. So let me try minus 100. See if, and this should go back to, I added a condition. So
yes.
Let me try another 100.
We can only increase salaries. That's cool.
Yes, indeed. So I'm expecting this to go to 3,200. That is correct. Now, a second option, which would be more performant, would be to say, hey, execute this update statement and pass in the values directly. So we don't loop through every record, which would be less performant. So these are just two different ways that we can execute the same thing.
Cool. Yeah, and currently MLE ships basically with JavaScript, but I think the longer term plan is that we add even additional languages like, let's say, Python, for example, as well, in some future releases. Yes,
I'm definitely looking forward to that. And the cool thing is you can have multiple processes in here. And so the first one gets executed, and the second one, and the third one, and so on. And they're completely independent of each other, right? So the first one can be in PL SQL, the second time can do something in JavaScript, the third one could do something in Python, and so on. And at the end, if every process was successful, Apex commits your changes and responds to the browser that, hey, I'm done with that process. So that's basically how it works.
Cool.
But you saw from this example, these are like 2 extra lines of code, right? So it wouldn't make that much sense in this scenario to use JavaScript unless you completely don't know PL SQL, although we had to embed it in here.
Right.
So I would still prefer the PL SQL option. However, where JavaScript really shines is it gives us the ability to tap into that NPM ecosystem that I was talking about earlier. So we can literally take all of those awesome libraries, bring them into the database, execute them, and then use whatever object they expose, right? Currently, the way to do that is by manually bringing in the code. So I have a table here. I believe it's called, I have to change the language, of course. MLE module. You can see that based on a module name, I actually have all of that code stored.
This is some JavaScript code that we...
Yeah, exactly. Some minified JavaScript library.
Some minified JavaScript code that...
That's right. So we expect this to get better in the future. That's something MLE team is looking into. So an easier way of getting this code in. But right now I just built a little widget here that can add a module based on a name and a URL. It will just pull it in, or you can just drag and drop your module. And then once it's in this table, we can expose a global function, and I'll show you that in a bit, that takes it, executes it, and makes it available. And I have a couple of examples for you here. The first one being form validation. So Apex has some nice validations out of the box, but it doesn't have that many. Of course, you could write your own regular expressions for it, but why do that when there's already an NPM module doing it for you? Right. So here I want to validate email address and credit card number. I want to make sure that by the time we actually insert this into a table, everything is correct. So let me just input something here and an invalid email address, like email at example, and a invalid credit card number. This should not exist. So I want to submit this. It says, hey, this is not valid. This is not valid. How did we implement this? Well, Apex has something called validations. So we have our items, our button, and on the processing side, we have validations. And so far, we could create a validation, and there's all types of things here. But the user was only able to do it in PL SQL. Now we can say, hey, I want this validation to be done in JavaScript. we can use our global function require module that picks up the code identified by this name. In this case, it's validator.js, a JavaScript library. This will execute that code and return whatever that library exposes. And in this case, this library exposes an isEmail function that based on a parameter, which in our case is just a page item, this, will basically just evaluate to a Boolean. If this is true, the validation passes. If it is false, we show an error message right underneath this field. And clearly it worked. So now if we correct our input here, and I actually do have a valid credit card number, a dummy one, but still. So if I am to submit this, it submits successfully. We don't actually process, we don't do anything with this data, but the takeaway is that this library in the backend worked successfully.
Cool.
Same thing for the credit card, right? It's just a different function. But that is, I think, very cool.
Yeah.
I have a couple more. So I have like 5 more examples.
Cool.
Barcode generation. So far, we could not really generate a QR code in the Oracle database backend. There might have been some third-party, perhaps commercial offerings. I'm not exactly sure, but there is a QR code JavaScript library which can do that for us. So why not use that? So let's type in some URL here. com/free create, and we will get back a QR code. Of course, we could have used this library already in the front end, right?
So in this case, so my understanding here, like in this case, the JavaScript produces an image of some sort. So can you show the code for this?
Yes.
Because here the result is something a little bit more complex than just...
Yes, well, this library, what it produces is actually just a base64 string.
Oh, cool.
And in our case, we just dump it into another page item, which happens to be of type display image. And Apex will take care of displaying
and that will run on the client. So the generation of the image will run on the client, and the
generation will of course run in the...
the generation will run on the server, but the display of the image from the base...
Right. So if we look at the source, I'm assuming we should see it in here. So P20 QR code. Right,
yes,
here it is.
The container, yes, exactly.
Right, so why would you want to generate a QR code on the server as opposed to as a client? Well, perhaps you want to, email it out, right? You do that on the server. Perhaps you want to embed it in reports, in documents, and so on.
Right.
So that is very easily doable. So if you look at the code, it's trivial, right? Once you have this library loaded with a couple of lines of code, you get this...
It's a very powerful mechanism to here benefit from complex libraries that are available for free.
Exactly. I have some Markdown to HTML conversion here. So this is a title or some code. I send this to the backend and I get back my HTML. Again, works very similarly. I require my module, I just use it, and I do something with the output. In this case, just assign it to another page item.
Cool.
You can do much more complex things as well. So HTML sanitization, say you have HTML code or HTML markup stored in your database, and you want to serve it to end users via Apex, you should of course sanitize it because you don't want to open up for various cross-site scripting attacks and so on. And usually you would do this on the client, so you would send it as part of some JSON, then pass it through some library, and only then add it to the DOM. I'm not even going to demo this. It might take some time, but doing it on the server helps, because if you already send to the client a clean HTML, this helps in a number of reasons. The page loads faster. Perhaps if it's a public website, crawlers index your website better, like Google.
Yeah, exactly.
And so on.
Yes, and the client device might be a mobile device or something like that. That's not...
Exactly, and you don't need to load an extra library on the client. So
it makes your websites much more snappy, right?
Exactly. So I use two libraries actually. Right, the JS DOM and DOM Purify. So what I wanted to show. We are not actually in a browser environment. So we are in a pure JavaScript environment. So if we do something like console log window, this doesn't exist. That's the thing to keep in mind. We do have access to something called global this, which is a global object, but we don't have access to window. So if we want to use certain browser-specific libraries, we might have to kind of fake a browser environment via things like JS DOM, which can do that for us. So for certain libraries, there might be some wrapping to do, or you might have to, as I said, fake an environment. But so far, I could get every library that I tried working.
Yeah, very cool. Yes, so there's one question in the chat, like about security-related matters here, meaning like regarding denial of service attacks on basically getting this Apex, spamming requests to it or something like that. Do you have any like standard mechanisms to deal with that?
I'm not understanding that. Come again?
So do you have any mechanisms against denial of service attacks? Well, let's say I have here an Apex computation, but then a client would like spam requests to that server endpoint.
Right. So that's probably something our middle tier, our little web server that routes these URLs to the database.
Right. Yes. That's solved in the middle tier as in your cloud, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So just two more examples. I have image manipulation. So currently in the Oracle database, they recently supported a package that could do image manipulation. So customers are looking for alternatives. And I've seen some alternatives pop up, but it would require you in the backend to send your image via REST, right, to some external service, third-party service. Perhaps you don't want to do that. And you would then get it back. So that adds a certain overhead and a dependency on a third-party library. Here, I'm demonstrating that I'm uploading an image and I am just flipping it. So some basic image manipulation. So I have this image and I just flipped it in the backend. So I use a library called GIMP, and it can do all sorts of things, including watermarking or things like that, or resizing.
This is also a JavaScript library, right?
Yes. Everything I'm showing here are JavaScript libraries that were integrated fairly.
Right, simply. Yeah, that's quite some sophisticated library here.
Yeah, so one last example.
Yeah, the sentiment analysis. Yes, that's my favorite.
Yeah, so I don't have a crazy example, but I'm just going to paste in something like, I absolutely love cats. They're great. Right. I'm going to analyze the string and I get a relative happiness score of 6.
Right.
Compare this to something like, this is the worst product ever. This gives me a -6. So I use sentiment.js for this. And you might wonder, why would we want to do this, especially in sort of a business environment? Or I could think of an example. Say you have some sort of feedback mechanism on your website. So every page might have some little feedback box. And say you have a huge application that gets lots of feedback, you might want to filter some of that feedback to prioritize it, right? So if you get a very negative comment, it might mean that something is not working properly in your app. So you might want to trigger some email notification, for example, right? So you could use this library to prioritize things like this. I also added this little emoji here, which I would want to talk about just briefly. So we don't only use MLE or JavaScript on the processing side. We can also use it on the rendering side. So at render time, right, render something differently. And in this case, I have this hidden page item, which you could think of maybe as a variable. And the source for this variable is also written in JavaScript. So based on the value of one specific page item, we build up this other icon. Just in between
based
some thresholds, we show
based
different.
On the score, yeah.
Exactly, and then we use this item right next to the result because we have this little icon field here. We can reference this other hidden item, and that's how we can also update things like that. So JavaScript also on rendering at render time, perhaps via an AJAX call, we can also execute it, and on submit. Yeah, so exciting times, I think.
Yeah, exactly. That's like a ton of use cases you showed here that were with very little code achieved here with MLE plus Apex. So this is really, really cool. Yes. So just for me as being a little bit more new to Apex, can you show a little bit more of maybe the form you had this UI to create the forms and things like that?
Sure. I mean, let's in Apex, we have a bunch of wizards. So you could go ahead and create your own components. Like I can create a region, and this region is a classic report or a more interactive sort of report. And then you would specify a table and so on.
Okay.
But we also have a bunch of other things. Like, actually, let me go ahead and create a completely new application. How about that?
Yes.
I'm going to go ahead and click on create, new application. You can also create an application based on a spreadsheet, which would also generate a bunch of pages. You would create the data model and try to normalize your data. It's quite cool, but we just want a very blank app, right?
Okay.
You can choose different appearances and things like that.
Right.
But we can also change that. You can generate a bunch of standard pages like feedback, right, or user, but we just want the very basics. This will take a bit.
Yes, 2 seconds.
Yeah. And here we have it. So application number 106 is our blank app, which was generated with a home page, a login page, and a global page. So if we run this app, we are now...
Right, including authentication already. Right?
That's right. So all of your workspace users, which you can manage here, have access to your app. And you can fine tune this in a bunch of ways. Right. So by default, we just have one page, right? Or 2 pages, a navigation bar, navigation menu, and a little breadcrumb with an icon here. But if we dig in, click on home, for example, we could start adding components here. But I was speaking of those wizards. So let's go ahead and create a new page. And it asks you, hey, what kind of page are you interested in? And I'm thinking of a form.
Yes, right.
And I'm thinking of a report with a form on top. And the page name of my report should just be emp report, let's say. And this is emp form. So it will be built on the emp table, I'm thinking. Next, create a navigation menu for my report. Thank you very much. And it asks me for the data source. So I want to build this on the emp table.
On some database table?
Exactly. Sense. So it already suggests everything for me. I don't really have to type anything. It pulls in all the fields from that table. I click on next. It will ask for a primary key. I select the emp node. Click on create and wait a bit.
Right, and here you can, yes, okay. So this is the primary key of that table, okay.
Of the table and of the report as well.
And we will now get the form that will kind of allow me to
add the data,
add data to this table, right?
That's right. So if we just run this page without any other things, we just got our report in a new entry here in the menu. We can click a button and edit those pages. So edit those records.
Adding items, yes.
There it is. So it knows that this field came from a date field. So it gives us a date picker, right? And things like that. And we can update. So this is Blake, and I want to update something, comment. Apply changes.
Must be.
Oh no, this is commission. Sorry,
commission.
Okay.
Commission. Yes,
okay, commission 101.
That's good.
Yeah, so validations, all of those things come out of the box. So commission 101 for Blake. Go ahead, create, it takes you to the same page. You can also have modal pages. So if I go to page 3, which is the form page, I say, hey, can you please be a modal dialog? Let's see what that does. Oh, so suddenly page 3 is not runnable directly anymore. I have to go to page 2. And now page 3 is a modal dialog. So very, very simple things. This widget itself is not just, it just doesn't just drop some data in an HTML table. It's an actual JavaScript widget, and it can do things like filtering. And you can download this as all types of things.
Forms, right, yes.
So very, very powerful. You can generate
and it took us like 5 minutes to create the whole app here.
So for basic CRUD applications, it's my go-to tool, right? I use it outside of work as well. Right.
Oh, very, very cool. Very cool here. Yes, and I'm excited about using, because I'm not a PL SQL developer. I like JavaScript. I like Python. So I'm excited to use these languages actually with this Apex in combination.
Yeah, and we're looking to make things easier. So calling SQL from JavaScript, we're looking to do that in a better way in future versions and things like that.
Yeah,
so
because it could like be combined maybe with there's JavaScript libraries for generators or for like MapReduce, etc. So that just makes the code look nice. But I think the main thing here would be this simplifying the way we can import node modules, right? Because in the end, I just want to go to npm.js, npm.org or something, and I wanna select the node module, and that should import me the code all automatically.
Yeah, and there's things also like dependency management, perhaps that. That should be done automatically and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. No, cool. Yeah. No, but already great to see that you can expand the use cases so much and more developer-friendly features in the future here. Cool.
Sure.
Very cool. Yes. Okay. Do we have questions in the Twitch chat that you would like to see us covered? We are like close to the top of the hour, but you might still be able to have 1 or 2 questions answered. We also have in the Twitch chat, I see some MLE developers here, so we can also answer detailed
I don't have
MLE.
access to the Twitch chat right now, but
no, I'm monitoring that one. It's good. Yes, we have MLE developers there. Lucas Brown was already answering some in-depth question. All right, you have one question here from Oleg. Can JavaScript in the database interact with files, like zip a few files together? I would assume that the source of data would be by default only database tables, right? And you could store a file, meaning a binary blob in such a table, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I think the answer there is kind of like the Oracle database thinks of itself as the only like thing to provide data, including files, binary data, and so on. So you would store those files in tables and then access them. All right, another question here from Christian Hummer, aka Krashall. Do you have ideas for more advanced debugging features? Yeah, actually, we didn't show debugging at all.
Right. So let me go ahead and do that quickly.
Exactly. It will be great. Yes.
No, I want to go to some basic demo. Let's see that QR code generation demo. So we cannot set breakpoints and things like that yet. In PL SQL, we can do that. It would require a bit more infrastructure and an external program, SQL developer or something like that. Through the browser, it does not currently work. Right. But if you want to just do some basic console logging, I can show you something interesting. So let's say we want to actually know what the length of this base64 string is, right? So when we do console log, I'll just show you where this ends up. Let me see if I copy this and I do dot length. And I'm just going to add a little flag to spot it easier in the logs.
Mm-hmm.
Run this page. Right, so first of all, I have to turn on debug, which is if I'm logged into the builder, I also get during runtime this little toolbar at the bottom here, which can do a bunch of things. Mm-hmm. But it can also turn on debug mode, and we can see that via the URL here. And if we generate something new, so we run this code, everything worked fine.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, this will open a modal dialog. So it opened it in a different window, which you cannot see. Let me see if I can copy this and paste it in here.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, there it is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So this is debugging in Apex. So every request gets its own identifier, and we can drill in and see what happened. So I clicked on the
right, and this is stored, I assume, in some table, right?
Exactly. So here you will get a mix of internal Apex stuff, right? Like we get to see that at some point the NLS language was set and so on. Mm-hmm. But this will be also combined with whatever we outputted. So the length of that base64 string is 2,138 characters.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Very cool, yes. And on the breakpoint side, I guess this is currently worked on to make sure that you can also then set a breakpoint also in the JavaScript code, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and from our side, I know of one effort from our side to make the debugging even more advanced with some instrumentation in GraalVM, because with GraalVM we can instrument the code nicely, and this will also end up at some point in this MLE here.
Mm-hmm. Can't wait.
Cool. Excellent. Yes, thank you so much, Stefan, for this great introduction to this. Yes, so let me you just stopped sharing the screen, so I need to fix up the or maybe you just, yes, we have now also Salim back. Let me go to the this mode. Does it work? No. Here we still have Christian and Voyen in some frozen. All right, I will just have I will end this with Stefan on the big screen. That should be good enough. All right, cool. Thank you very much, Stefan, for the demo, and also Salim for the presentation. It has been great. I definitely will try up Apex here for some apps moving forward with JavaScript and MLE. This sounds very exciting, and maybe I can at some point do some live coding on this Twitch stream on some app as well. I enjoy these live coding sessions where you can really show how you build the app, and yeah, maybe Stefan, you can also in some future Twitch stream show building some application from scratch. I think that could be quite nice to really demonstrate how fast and easy it is with Apex.
Sure.
To build that. Yeah.
Salim and I are always available for demos and chats.
Cool, excellent, sounds great. Then yes, I would like to thank our viewers on Twitch. It has been a great session. I enjoyed it. I hope you enjoyed it too. You can, as always, reach out to me on the GraalVM Slack if you have feedback to the session, what you'd like to see next, and we will upload the recording of the session probably in a few days, so people can later watch it as well, or asynchronously who couldn't join this time. But it will be available on Twitch for the next 2 weeks. They store it there automatically, and you can share the link with whoever you think is also interested in this. And with this, I'm going offline for today, and I will stream again next week, and Oleg will also stream again next week. I think next week we will have the GraalVM release stream actually, which will also be quite exciting for 21.1. So we would be happy if you can join that as well next week, and we will publish the stream schedule for next week as usual, either probably late tomorrow, so you can see if next week you wanna dial in as well. Cool. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Have a great week, and yeah, thank you. Bye bye.